A response video to 8RF. We did talk about some of this in Stickum, but I guess it's worth making a video about. He's kind of irritated that, I'm being kind of insulting, and I don't mean to be. It's just that, he's the one with the extraordinary belief, which is basically that, plants are exercising, are capable of some kind of feeling, and that they react based on a feeling. And it's just ludicrous to me. I mean, I don't have any other word for it. I think it's really a minority view. I mean, I think 9 out of 10 people at least understand that plants don't feel. And regarding the science, it's probably something. I mean, science can't really study consciousness very well. There aren't any, there's no tool that measures it, no Geiger counter that measures it. But, and then there's scientists who, there's lots of crazy scientists in the world. I mean, there's scientists who believe in God and Noah's Ark and all that stuff. So sometimes the word science doesn't mean much. So this is how I'd explain it. Let's think of consciousness kind of like magnetism. It's kind of a phenomenon, magnetism, that's rare. I mean, it just doesn't happen everywhere in nature. And it's very specific. You have to have specific circumstances, usually related to the existence of iron as part of the molecular structure of the thing that is magnetic. And so let's think of consciousness as the same kind of thing. It's a phenomenon that requires certain circumstances to exist. It just doesn't exist in everything that exists. It's rare in that sense. The matter has to be specifically arranged for it to exist. And I mean, by common experience, we sort of understand that our consciousness exists in our brain, and that if you start disconnecting us from our nervous system, you will detach us from any conscious awareness of that part of the body. So if I break the spinal cord, for example, all that will be left is some sort of memory, perhaps, of sensation, but there will be no actual sensation traveling to the brain anymore. No feeling. And so it will be a disconnected limb. I mean, it will not mean anything to me anymore. I mean, I think we've all had where, something, pinched our arm the wrong way and it fell asleep. I mean, it just becomes this thing attached to you that doesn't mean anything to you personally anymore. So, I mean, there's this obvious necessity that the wiring be there. If the wiring isn't there, there's no feeling. The nerve endings, the cells, they have to be there, the specific ones. And it's, especially in the animal organism, sensation is very dependent. I mean, pressure is okay. Too much pressure becomes pain. So it's been wired specifically, hardwired to create sensations based on how it is stimulated or interfered with or exposed to the environment. And so it just seems obvious. And so if we have to try to explore it further and come up with an explanation, I would say consciousness exists in a brain when there exists the capacity to learn. Because learning is what sort of invokes the feedback loop. And without the feedback loop, I think that's what consciousness is that feedback loop. That's the phenomenon. That's the thing that's the magnetism. And that's what changes everything. That's the arrangement that has to exist. Because I think if all you have is a nerve ending, and then a reaction, that just goes right back again, like the autonomic system. We don't feel it. We don't sense it. It performs its tasks without us being consciously aware of it, because nothing gets to the brain. and it's a programmed response. It can only respond one way. And there's some organisms that sort of function on that level, probably. They have no capacity to learn. I can't think of them off the top of my head, just because a lot of very primitive organisms do learn. I mean, even earthworms can learn, you know, that left means good and right means bad in an experiment. So they have some feedback loop taking place. But that's the main ingredient here. And I would say that the cortex is the necessary organ. That's the reflector. That's the thing that forces information back through our consciousness. I mean, back through our brain to be reprocessed and to acquire the nuances of learning, to the extra bits. That's where it's injected before it causes some sort of, before we again stimulate our automatic system to do what we want it to do. And so the purpose of it, you know, obviously there's an advantage for an organism to be able to learn specific to its environment, and to you know, be able to acclimate to its environment in an individual way, and not just be relying on genetically structured hard wiring. It's good to have reprogrammable software, and so that's why I think most animals have it. It's because there's an advantage to having it. Evolutionarily, I think the animals that didn't have it died off, were killed off by these smarter animals that could learn. And you don't see any of that in the plant world, because individual intelligence and individual adaptability is not a component being selected for. The necessary components being selected for is just being able to make enough leaves and get enough energy, and you know, that's it, narrowly speaking. So like I said, the feeling is the consciousness is merely an awareness. But like I say, I don't know. It's so hard to explain what it is, because we don't really, you know, we can't just say there, you know, point to one tiny spot in the brain and say that's where consciousness is. But it really is dependent on an arrangement inside a complex intelligence. And I'm not saying it can't exist in some other mechanism, but it has to be a mechanism sufficiently complex, or at least have the constituent parts, which is this feedback thing. I think that really is necessary. And so I don't know how, you know, I don't know where else to take this. I mean, I can come up with all kinds of examples, you know, I mean, of when animals aren't feeling anymore, and why they don't feel anymore, and why there's nothing in what plants do that is anything more than a reaction, a physical reaction. I mean, the Venus flytrap, you touch the little hairs and the little thing closes. Now, it's not feeling it. There's not some brain or some conscious bit inside of that plant saying, okay. I mean, each little trap works independently, and it's just a matter of hit the trigger, the trap closes. There's nothing. It's a machine. It's a little mechanical machine. It's not a feeling organism. It's not independently realizing, oh, a fly has landed, I shall capture it now. None of that's taking place. So I mean, there's, like I said, I don't know how far to take this point, but it's just that you really, learning is the key ingredient, and having that capacity to send information back through the stream and allow the organism to refine their reaction, so it isn't just this all or nothing. That's what intelligence does. That's what learning does. It gives you the capacity to be disciplined. It controls how much you're feeling, how strong your sensation is, how strong your need is. And it's the whole idea of this ambiguous need, these ambiguous emotions that it creates that don't force an action, they suggest an action, and then allow the individual brain to decide how to interpret that suggestion. But obviously, there's nothing in the crude mechanics of a plant that is really more like just a bee colony. It's just it's a colony of cells that really aren't working at anything but a little individual level. There's no, it's not really functioning on anything more than a genetically instructed level.
There's nothing but a raw blueprint that says this is how the stem cells grow, this is how these cells do, this is what they're just individually doing their thing. And there just isn't any central processor that's monitoring everything and adjusting to the environment. It's just not happening. So they aren't feeling anything.